In 2025, while Wall Street cools and China slows, something extraordinary is happening. A quiet financial revolution that's reshaping the global map of money. Global investors, from billionaire hedge fund managers to sovereign wealth funds, are turning their eyes east, toward India. Yes, India, a country that for decades was seen as the emerging story, is now emerging as the destination. Over the last 12 months, record-breaking sums have flowed into Indian equities. Hedge funds once obsessed with Silicon Valley startups are now chasing opportunities in Mumbai, Bengaluru, and Hyderabad. The Nifty 50 and Sensex are smashing all-time highs, and for the first time in history, India's total market capitalization has crossed $5 trillion, overtaking several developed nations. It's not just luck, it's momentum. The world's smartest investors, from BlackRock to Temasek, from Ray Dalio's Bridgewater to Singapore's GIC, are quietly increasing their positions in India's banks, infrastructure giants, and tech startups. They're betting not on hype, but on the next global growth engine. But the question is, why now? Why are fund managers in New York and London, who once looked at India as a high-risk bet, suddenly calling it the investment story of the decade? Is it the country's economic resilience? Its demographic edge? Its booming digital economy? Or something deeper, a global realignment of capital away from the West and into Asia's new financial frontier? By the end of this video, you'll understand why the world's sharpest minds believe India isn't just part of the global market anymore, it is the market. Because this isn't just an investment story, it's a shift of global power happening right now. India's rise to tech superpower. For decades, India was known as the world's outsourcing hub. American companies sent their IT and customer service work to cities like Bangalore and Hyderabad, where highly educated professionals could deliver results at a fraction of the cost. But that old stereotype, India as the back office of the world, has already been left behind. Today, India is no longer just outsourcing talent, it's leading global innovation. Look at the country's digital revolution. The Aadhaar system, the world's largest biometric ID program, gave more than 1 billion people secure digital identities. Then came UPI, a homegrown instant payment platform that has reshaped finance. India now processes more digital transactions each month than the US, China, and Europe combined. Add in the government's Digital India initiative, and you see how the country has built infrastructure for a truly 21st century economy. On the global stage, Indian companies like Infosys, TCS, and Wipro have transformed into major IT powerhouses. Meanwhile, the startup ecosystem has exploded, producing unicorns in fintech, e-commerce, and edtech. And then there's space. ISRO's Chandrayaan-3 mission landed successfully on the Moon's South Pole, a feat even major powers hadn't achieved. India has also launched satellites for dozens of countries, proving it's not just catching up, it's setting new benchmarks. Perhaps the clearest sign of India's rise is its people. The world's top tech firms, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Adobe, are all led by Indian-born CEOs. This isn't a coincidence. It's a reflection of a talent pool that is shaping not just India's future, but the future of global technology itself. Trump's history with India. When Donald Trump talks about India, his words are often larger than life. During his presidency, he made headlines by attending massive rallies with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. First the Howdy Modi event in Houston, then the equally dramatic Namaste Trump spectacle in Ahmedabad. Both showcase Trump's flair for theatrics and Modi's ability to mobilize huge crowds. For Trump, it was more than a photo op. It was proof that he had a personal connection with one of the world's most influential leaders. But beneath the smiles and handshakes, Trump's relationship with India was more complicated. As president, he often clashed with New Delhi over trade. He imposed tariffs on Indian goods, removed India from a preferential trade program, and complained that US companies were losing billions because of what he called unfair practices. For Trump, it was always about the bottom line, whether America was winning in the relationship. Outsourcing was another flashpoint. On one hand, Trump acknowledged India's skill and efficiency in tech services. On the other, he criticized American companies for sending jobs overseas. He walked a fine line between praising India's rise and promising his base that jobs would come back to American soil. Still, Trump's approach was classic Trump, transactional. He admired strength, respected Modi's leadership style, and wasn't afraid to push hard for deals. His interactions with India weren't driven by ideology, but by his belief that every relationship should produce a clear win for the United States. That mindset forms the backdrop for how he would view India's rise. As a global tech power today, praise for India's success. If there's one thing Donald Trump loves, it's a winner. And in the tech world, India increasingly looks like one. He would almost certainly highlight India's transformation as proof of what strong leadership can achieve. In Trump's mind, leaders like Modi who deliver results for their country deserve recognition, just as he often claimed credit for America's economic growth during his own presidency. Trump could easily frame India's rise as a story of discipline and determination. He might point to India's booming digital economy, its moon landing, or its dominance in software services as examples of a nation that refuses to settle for second place. These are the kinds of accomplishments Trump likes to spotlight, big, bold achievements that send a message to the world. There's also the element of shared values. Trump frequently praised India as the world's largest democracy, positioning it as a natural partner to America. In contrast to China, Trump might say India represents freedom, ambition, and entrepreneurship, all qualities he likes to brand himself with. And then there's the political calculation. Indian Americans are one of the fastest growing and most successful immigrant groups in the US, especially in tech and business. Trump has courted them before, and he knows they respect leaders who recognize India's global role. By praising India's success, he appeals not only to Modi, but also to a diaspora community that could be influential in US elections. So, when it comes to India's victories, Trump would likely go on record with unfiltered admiration, calling India a nation that's winning big on the world stage. Concerns about jobs and outsourcing. But Trump's admiration has limits, especially when American workers feel the impact. For decades, US jobs in tech support, customer service, and even software engineering have been outsourced to India. Entire call centers in states like Texas and Florida disappeared as companies found cheaper labor overseas. For Trump, this is an issue that plays directly into his America First message. On the campaign trail, he often blasted companies for sending jobs abroad. He promised to bring those jobs back and punish corporations that put profits over American workers. India's rise as a tech superpower, in Trump's eyes, could be both impressive and threatening, good for global innovation, but bad if it means fewer jobs for US citizens. Then there's immigration. Trump's stance on the H-1B visa program, which allows skilled foreign workers, many from India, to work in the US, has been mixed. He acknowledged that America benefits from top Indian engineers, but he also tried to tighten restrictions, arguing that some companies abuse the system to cut costs. His rhetoric often swung between praise for the best and brightest and criticism of cheap labor displacing Americans. This tension defines Trump's likely reaction to India's success. He could celebrate India's achievements but insist that America must protect its workforce. In typical Trump style, he might say, "We want the smartest Indians here in America, but we can't let our companies ship all the jobs overseas." It's a balancing act between recognizing India's talent and defending his promise to put American workers first. India versus China in tech. Of course, any conversation about global technology eventually circles back to Trump's favorite rival, China. During his presidency, Trump framed almost every economic and strategic issue as a competition with Beijing. In that context, India's rise as a tech power would likely be seen as a welcome development. For Trump, India becoming a leader in areas like AI, 5G, and cybersecurity isn't just India's victory. It's also a way to weaken China's dominance. He could frame India as a safe partner, a democracy with shared values, unlike China's authoritarian system. Trump might argue that America is better off supporting India's ascent than letting China dictate the future of technology. The rivalry extends beyond economics. Trump often accused China of intellectual property theft, hacking, and unfair trade. By contrast, he described India as a country he could do business with. That distinction would shape his rhetoric today. He could highlight India as a partner the US can trust with sensitive technologies, while using the moment to remind voters of his hardline stance against China. This doesn't mean Trump would see India purely as a friend. He'd still view its success through a competitive lens. But compared to China, India offers a counterweight that fits neatly into Trump's worldview. Better India than China, and better a strong democracy than a rising authoritarian rival. For Trump, that narrative would be as politically useful as it is strategically sound. Trade deals and tech partnership. If there's one thing Trump loves more than rallies, it's deals. During his presidency, he constantly emphasized his ability to strike agreements that favored America, often boasting about his skill as a negotiator. When it comes to India's rise as a tech superpower, Trump's instinct would be to turn admiration into opportunity through bilateral deals. Trump has long disliked multilateral frameworks, calling them bureaucratic and unfair to the United States. With India, he'd prefer a one-on-one arrangement that he could brand as a historic deal. Such an agreement would likely focus on three key demands. First, greater market access for US tech companies in India, especially in its booming digital services sector. Second, joint ventures in emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, space exploration, and defense systems, areas where both countries could benefit from collaboration. And third, strict intellectual property protection, ensuring American innovations aren't copied or undercut. Trump could even frame a new arrangement as a U.S. India Tech Alliance, a partnership designed to counterbalance China's dominance. In his typical style, he'd brand it as the biggest, boldest, and most powerful tech deal the world has ever seen. For him, it's not just about trade, it's about optics, legacy, and proving he can out-negotiate anyone, including Beijing and Brussels. To Trump, India's rise isn't just a challenge, it's also a bargaining chip. And if he were back in the White House, you can bet he'd want America at the center of that deal-making process. Immigration and Indian talent. When you look at Silicon Valley, Wall Street, and even America's top universities, Indian talent is everywhere. From CEOs like Sundar Pichai at Google and Satya Nadella at Microsoft, to tens of thousands of engineers powering startups, Indian professionals have become essential to the US innovation engine. Trump knows this, and it complicates his usual tough talk on immigration. On the campaign trail, Trump often criticized the H-1B visa system, saying companies abused it to replace American workers with cheaper foreign labor. Yet in quieter moments, he admitted that America needs the best and the brightest, and many of those happen to come from India. His solution? A merit-based immigration system, which would prioritize highly skilled workers over family reunification or refugee quotas. That's a message that resonates with his base while still leaving the door open to Indian talent. There's also a political angle. Indian Americans are one of the wealthiest and most educated immigrant groups in the United States. They donate heavily to political campaigns and wield growing influence in swing states. Trump has tried to appeal to them before, often praising Modi and emphasizing US-India friendship during rallies. So, while Trump may complain about outsourcing or low-cost labor, he also sees value in welcoming elite Indian engineers, doctors, and business leaders. It's a balancing act. Protect US jobs for everyday Americans, but keep the pipeline open for the talent that keeps America at the cutting edge of global technology. Trump versus Biden. Who handles India better? Trump rarely misses a chance to draw contrasts between himself and his rivals, and India would be no exception. If India's tech rise dominates headlines, Trump would almost certainly argue that he, not Joe Biden, is the leader best suited to handle it. First, he'd play up his personal connection with Prime Minister Modi. The massive Howdy Modi and Namaste Trump rallies gave Trump political theater unlike anything Biden has staged. He'd say India respected him more, and that Modi trusted him because of his strength and directness. In Trump's narrative, Biden is weak, soft on China, and too slow to recognize India's importance. Second, Trump would frame India's rise as something that happened during his presidency. He'd claim credit for creating conditions, tough trade policies, pressure on China, and global deal-making that indirectly helped India expand its tech dominance. Even if the timeline doesn't perfectly match reality, Trump's talent lies in shaping perception, not sticking to fine details. Finally, he'd argue that under Biden, America risks losing its edge. He'd claim Biden's policies empower China, not India, and that only a Trump-led White House could secure the kind of bold trade and tech partnerships needed to keep America ahead. In the battle of narratives, Trump would make it simple. Modi is with him, India thrives with him, and America leads with him. Anything else, he'd argue, is second place. Global impact of India's tech power. India's rise as a tech superpower isn't just about Silicon Valley partnerships or domestic job shifts, it's about reshaping the global order. And for Trump, that's exactly the kind of high-stakes competition he thrives on. The United States, long the global leader in technology, now faces both competition and opportunity. On one hand, Indian companies and innovations can challenge US firms in areas like fintech, software, and digital services. On the other, India offers a vast talent pool and an enormous market that American companies are eager to tap into. Trump would frame this as a test of America's ability to adapt, partner when it benefits us, compete when we must. Europe, meanwhile, is at risk of falling behind. Countries like Germany and France talk about digital sovereignty, but they lack the scale of India or the entrepreneurial drive of the US. Trump could use that as proof that America must always stay aggressive or risk slipping like Europe. And then there's China. India's growing influence directly threatens Beijing's tech ambitions. From 5G networks to AI leadership, China sees India as a rival for global contracts and credibility. For Trump, that's the silver lining. India's rise could help contain China's dominance. Ultimately, Trump would frame the situation in his favorite terms: winning and losing. He'd say India is winning big, China must be checked, and America can only stay number one if it embraces competition and locks in partnerships with allies who share democratic values. His message would be clear: India's success is impressive, but America must always lead. Global investor perspective, voices that matter. It's not just hype. The world's biggest financial voices are now looking at India differently, and with conviction. Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, recently said India will be one of the few winners in a multipolar world. That's coming from a man who studies global power shifts for a living and sees India rising while others stall. Morgan Stanley calls it India's decade of transformation, comparing it to China's boom in the early 2000s. They see India evolving from a services hub into a full-spectrum engine: manufacturing, consumption, tech, finance. Even Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is rumored to explore Indian financials, a signal of long-term value interest. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink declared, without hesitation, India represents the new global growth center for 20 years. With deeper inclusion in MSCI and FTSE indices, passive fund inflows are accelerating into Indian equities. Every index upgrade means billions in automatic capital entering the market. No pitch needed, just momentum. The tone among institutions is clear and unified. This isn't speculation, it's positioning for transformation. Smart money isn't asking if India will lead. They're asking how much exposure they can afford to miss. How retail investors can ride this wave. So what about you, the everyday investor watching? This from your phone, your laptop, your living room? You don't need to be a billionaire or hedge fund manager to benefit from India's economic rise. The opportunity is wide open, but strategy matters. Start with the basics. Focus on fundamentals, not hype. India's story is a marathon, not a sprint. Use SIPs in diversified index funds to compound quietly. Let the economy do the heavy lifting while you stay consistent, patient, and focused on long-term growth. Look towards sectors that mirror India's momentum: infrastructure, renewable energy, digital tech, and banking. These aren't fads. They're structural growth stories backed by policy, demographics, and global demand. And remember, volatility isn't the enemy, it's the price of admission for long-term returns. Every market dip is a stress test, separating tourists from true investors with conviction and grit. If you believe in India's next decade, act like it. Stay invested, stay consistent, and think long-term. Because wealth doesn't come from timing the market, it comes from time in the market, always. India's rise is still in its early chapters, and the smart retail investor is already reading ahead. NDIA as the next financial frontier. There's a bigger story behind the numbers and charts. India's rise isn't just financial, it's philosophical. For decades, the world saw India as the back office of globalization, coding, outsourcing, serving others. But that image no longer fits the reality. Today, India is building, innovating, and leading forward. From AI startups in Bangalore to hydrogen plants in Gujarat, India is shaping global infrastructure. Supply chains, digital systems, and investment flows are now running through Indian veins with confidence. This is a generational pivot, 1 billion people turning quiet ambition into global influence. A quote making rounds on Dale Street says it best: for decades, investors asked when India will rise. Now they're asking, how high can it go? That shift from doubt to desire says everything. India is not the next story, it is the story. And the world is finally catching up to it. As global capital lands on Indian shores, the country proves growth is built on belief. Not just numbers, but persistence, vision, and reinvention. India is the next financial frontier, and it's here. So let's bring it home, with clarity and conviction. India's stock market is breaking records, and momentum is real. Global capital is flooding in, long-term investors are. calling it the opportunity of the decade, not a trend. From domestic consumption to global diplomacy, from digital payments to defense manufacturing, India builds. The title of this video wasn't exaggeration. Smart investors really are rushing to buy Indian stocks. Because the future isn't waiting, it's being built here. In 2005, India was a story. In 2025, it's a strategy. And by 2030, it could be the standard. Now the question is, where do you stand? Would you invest in India today, or watch it rise? Which sectors do you think will dominate the next decade? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read them all. Hit that like button, share this with your circle, and subscribe for more global economy deep dives. Up next, India versus China. Who wins the economic war of the 2030s? You won't want to miss that one.